Hello, I'm architect Maria Desuva and I'm part of the EcoSpace team. In this webinar, you will have the opportunity to see additional techniques and tricks for building urban planning model and landscape on a larger scale. And we will prepare separate scenes. Now we see a preview of the project, and it is in one solid color in order to see the volumes and the shapes properly, which is one of the main tasks of the urban planning. Now I will begin with importing a Cad file. First, it is the drawing of the urban planning itself. As you may see, it is time consuming because sometimes these Cad files are larger with lots of objects and elements, so we have to be patient. Here we have a box with information of the file, close, and here it is. We continue with opening the second part, File, Import. As you may see, this Cad file that we've imported is flat. We don't have highs on the different points, so we have no denivellation, and that is why we will import a different type of Cad file, which is made in 3D dimension, and here the lines would be on different levels, so we will use the sandbox to make a contour terrain. When different specialists use one file, it is often occasion that we have different elements that are combined and some are not needed. Even though this surveyor's information is very important for us because it will help us make in a very easy and fast way the terrain with its landscape. As it is obvious, the two Cad files are pointing to different directions, so I rotate one of them. Now we can see how the two drawings matches and make some changes with the positioning if needed. Now I will demonstrate the option of the Sandbox Tools, but first let us see where we can get them. From View, Toolbars, Sandbox, and the first one is from contour. I select in the group these lines, then click on the tool, and now wait for the software to make automatically this terrain. It is as time consuming as the complexity of the geometry. Now I will give the terrain a material with the paint bucket tool to be seen easily. I choose from the menu a landscaping, fencing and vegetation material, and now I see the terrain as it is absolutely matching the geometry. We have to make the surfaces of the urban planning. If I try to close some surfaces now by using the line tool, directly making them on the CAD, this is impossible. It is easily mistaken, and the reason is that the CAD file is group, and if I want to make any changes or to add something, I have to first explode the elements, and I make this by clicking right button on the mouse and then explode. Now each line is separate, and I can use the line tool to make these closed surfaces. I need them to make the different roads and alley parts. It is the same way and method that we saw in the previous webinars, but as you may notice, it is very time-consuming process, especially if it is for a bigger terrain. The method is easy and simple. We just make additional geometry to close some parts of the elements, and here you saw a small line that we have to delete first and then to make the lines that we want. In the neighborhood that we made in the previous webinars, we saw this way of working, but here we will see how we can use an extension instead. Even by seeing with high speed this process, it still remains slow. So it is time to try this extension. I enter the menu and type down Enrod Face Creator. It is a free one. I just need to install it. Here it is the information. Pressing the button install. On the screen we see a box in the corner. It is actually the extension manager, in which we can see all these extensions that have some updates. It is very useful to check it because the developers make changes to improve the working of this extension, so keep in mind to check for new versions. I will now close it, and here it is as well. I select all of the geometry and then go to extension, choosing the one that we need, Enrod Face Creator, and now I see the software working on closing all these contours. You see how much of the work is done. It's faster, and now we have to make some additional changes and close bigger surfaces. Again, repeating the method. Keep in mind that this extension is very useful no matter of the direction of the geometry. It could be to any axis, so it could be a random one, and it works very well. So it is useful, especially when we have a lot of contours to be closed. Now we continue with one part of the work that we should never underestimate, because it is very important, especially if we have post-production and rendering. We have to reverse the faces in order to see the white part. Right click on the element, then reverse faces, and it is all done. Here with Select Tool and Control, the button from the keyboard, I could select multiple elements, and keep in mind that if the geometry is complex, it would be more time consuming again. So you have to always know what is the power of your hardware. This process could also be too time consuming, so we can search for extension here by typing all the keywords that we need as an action. This is a way of searching, and we will see that there are many options, some of which are paid. You can see the price listed, or sometimes we could have a link to external website where we can get additional information for payment. Of course, if you need this option in your workflow often, it is an investment that is worth doing. As all the surfaces are now reversed to the right direction, I will now group again all the elements, and I will make a copy of the group above the terrain so that I can begin with placing the buildings and the roads. Once again exploding the group, somebody could ask why. Well, when we have this complex geometry, it's easy and more useful to make a group to move it around and to match it and resize it in order to keep all the elements together, because it's very easy to left something behind, and in this case it would be too difficult to connect it again. Now I will use the Drape tool from the Sandbox toolbar. I first select the object that I want to make like a drape on the terrain, then clicking on the tool and choosing the path below. Now from the Sandbox toolbar we will use Stamp tool in this same method. You see now that we have a different 3D modeling of the terrain. It is different from the drape. And seeing these arrows up and down in red, we could change the vision of these steps. Now we have the modeling process of the buildings. By using Offset tool and Push-Pull tool, I will show you a very fast way to make one and the same action with the same measure. First, giving the height with Push-Pull tool, and then if I want the same height in the second one, I could just use double click with the mouse. It is the same case with the Offset tool, and once if I made these borders on the roof, I could just double click on the other buildings. we continue with stamping the terrain using the stamp tool. We can make some changes to the terrain by entering the group and adding geometry, placing materials, everything that we need. These stamps could be above the terrain or in it, so we can work with multiple faces or with single ones. It all depends on the designer's purpose. From the Windows menu, Default Tray and Scenes, we will see one very important and useful option in SketchUp. These scenes are very useful if we have a big scene which is larger and we have the need to see different angles of it, and this is a way to remember it. We can add name and description, so to be easier for us to remember what is this scene about. And in the workflow after that, we will add other scenes and make different designs of them. To model additional buildings, we will use one very interesting and useful extension called Enrod Townhouse System. After installing it, we can find it in the extension menu, and then making this geometry that is the face of the building. We could change the design at any point that we want, and we will show this advantage afterwards. When we update the scene, we have to remember that we have the option to choose which parameters to change and which to keep the same. In this part of the screen where it is the scene that we are working on, we have the soften edges option, which I will click on the below one, which is soften coplanar. This would give our terrain even soften vision, and it would be more realistic as well. Now it is more balanced, and we could continue with the finishing touches. From the shadow options, we can add this very realistic lighting effect. It is from the view toolbar, shadows, and we have different options for the time and the month, depending on what we want to show with these shadows. When I'm ready with changing them, I can update the scene. I could make different shadows for the different scenes, which is very useful because in the different angles I could need to see different lighting. In order to see the volumes better in this design, I would change the style into this one, and I have to update this scene. We have a box with some of the options. I could choose some of them to keep as the changes, and then I will see a new thumbnail in the right part of the screen. After adding some other elements and objects from the 3D warehouse to make richer the scene, this is the end of our project, and I wish you the best of luck and good work with the software, because SketchUp gives us the chance to make big and impressive projects. Goodbye and see you soon.